Zeus and the theft of fire by Prometheus. Welcome, wanderer of thoughts, seeker of ancient tales. As you settle into this moment, perhaps under the quiet veil of night, or in the soft embrace of a still afternoon, know that this space is yours. Thank you for pausing here, for choosing to linger where mythology weaves its timeless threads. If you're new to these stories, feel free to share a piece of your world, your city, your time zone, or simply what drew you to the myths tonight. Let's step into the shadows of the past, where gods and mortals meet, and where a single spark changed everything. Before fire, the world was a place of stone and shadow. Humanity lived in rhythm with the dark, their days dictated by the sun's rise and fall, their nights swallowed by a silence so thick it carried weight. The cold winds howled through jagged caves where early humans huddled, their bodies pressed, close for warmth, their breaths visible in the frosty air. Their dreams were not of grand futures, but of survival, fleeting images of food, shelter, and the fleeting safety of daylight. Days were spent foraging for roots and berries, crafting crude tools from flint and bone, tracking beasts with uncertain hope. Nights, however, belonged to the unknown, a vast and unyielding darkness that pressed against their fragile existence. Imagine their lives not tragic, but patient, etched in endurance. They watched the stars, nameless pinpricks of light in a sky too vast to comprehend. They followed the moon's phases like a celestial clock, its waxing and waning a guide through. The seasons. Food was eaten raw, its taste heavy with earth and blood. Death lingered close, a shadow that could claim them with a single misstep, a storm, a predator, a winter too harsh. Yet in their simplicity, there was resilience, a quiet strength in their persistence. Their lives were carved in breath, in frost, in the snap of branches underfoot. Stories lived only in memory, passed through gestures, grunts, and the rhythm of hands tracing shapes in the air, a language born not of words, but of survival. The shadows on cave walls became their first canvas, flickering in the dim light. Of makeshift torches made of resin and wood, they saw shapes in those shadows, animals, spirits, fears given form, but they could not yet hold flame, could not command its warmth or light. Their gods, if they imagined any, lived far beyond their reach, in a realm of untouchable light. The air was heavy with reverence, with the silence of a world not yet awakened. And in this hushed infancy of humanity, something ancient stirred. A watcher, a titan with eyes like clear skies before a storm, whose heart beat with a quiet defiance. Above, on the golden peaks of Olympus, the gods gazed down. Their world burned with divine fire, a radiance unknown to mortals. Marble pillars gleamed under its glow, and time itself seemed to bow to their immortality. Laughter echoed through feasts of ambrosia and nectar, the air alive with the hum of divine power. But below, humans scratched marks into stone. There, hands chapped and bleeding, their breath misting in the cold dawn. The smell of damp earth clung to their skin, a reminder of their fragility. They were not gods. They were bound to the earth, to its whims and its cruelties. What separated gods from mortals was not merely strength or eternal life. It was fire. Fire was mastery over the chaos of the world. It was the power to transform, to shape, to endure beyond the mercy of nature. It was civilization itself, hidden in the dance of a flame. The gods knew this, guarded it fiercely. Fire was not a gift to be shared. It was a boundary, a line drawn between the divine and the mortal, between those who ruled and those who suffered. Yet humans needed more than instinct to thrive. They needed memory, ritual, warmth. They needed the spark of transformation, the ability to turn raw survival into meaning. And for that, they needed Prometheus, not Zeus with his thunder, nor Ares with his warlust, but the quiet titan whose power lay in seeing what could be, not what was. Prometheus watched them long before he acted. From the heights of Olympus, his gaze lingered on their fragile forms, their fingers grasping at cold air, their eyes searching the darkness for answers. They were not beasts, though the gods often dismissed them as such. They were waiting, poised on the edge of something greater, their potential locked behind the absence of light. Prometheus, whose name meant forethought, saw humanity, not destined to cling to caves, but to rise, to build cities, to write songs, to dream with open eyes. He saw in them not weakness, but possibility, a spark waiting for kindling. Fire was more than heated. It was hope made tangible. It was memory, given form, the breath of gods harnessed by mortal hands. It was the bridge between myth and reality, between prayer and action, instinct and imagination. Prometheus understood that fire would not just warm their bodies, it would awaken their minds, ignite their capacity to create, to question, to become. It would change not just what they did, but what they believed they could be. Prometheus was no ordinary titan. Unlike Zeus, who ruled with thunder and fear, or Poseidon, who churned the seas in his rage, Prometheus's power was quieter, rooted in cunning and compassion. He had shaped humanity, molded them from clay, breathed life into their forms. He saw in them a reflection of his own creativity, a potential to evolve beyond their fragile beginnings. For generations, he watched them suffer winters that stole, children from their mother's arms, nights that stretched endlessly without light or warmth. Their hands, capable of crafting wonders, were empty of the tools to transform their world. Their voices, rich with stories, had no hearth to gather. Around, each winter, he saw families huddled closer, their breath mingling in the cold, their bodies trembling against the frost. He saw men chase shadows in search of warmth that never came, their hunts ending in exhaustion rather than triumph. A deep sorrow stirred in him, not pride, not defiance, but a quiet ache for the potential he knew they held. They had hands to build, minds to dream, but no spark to ignite their future. They were waiting for a gift they could not name. To the gods, fire was sacred, a divine privilege. It forged lightning in Zeus's hands, brewed ambrosia in their feasts, crafted weapons and destinies in their forges. To share it with mortals was unthinkable, like handing a child a sword too heavy to wield. Yet Prometheus saw not children, but creators, not weakness, but potential. He knew fire could burn, could destroy, but he also knew it could warm, illuminate, transform. The true risk was not the flame itself, but the awakening it would spark, the questions it would birth, the futures it would forge. So he decided, not in a blaze of rebellion, but in a quiet certainty of compassion. His choice was not born of anger, but of lifetimes spent watching humanity struggle. He would bring them fire, not just the physical flame, but what it represented. Memory, invention, power. A chance to shape their own stories, to step out of the shadows and become authors of light. Prometheus imagined a world where humans were no longer silent observers of the cosmos, but active participants. They would forge tools, build homes, dream futures. They would become poets, farmers, architects, storytellers. All it would take was a single spark, a humble gift to ignite a revolution. He knew the cost. Zeus was not a god of mercy. To defy Olympus was to invite wrath, to challenge the order of the divine. But the silence of the cold was louder than fear, the weight of humanity's suffering heavier than any punishment. The time had come to act not with war or thunder, but with a whisper, a gift. No god gave him permission. He did not ask, for he knew the answer. Sometimes, to serve what is right, one must walk through forbidden doors, knowing the price, but choosing the path regardless. He waited for the perfect moment. A night when Zeus feasted among the gods or Poseidon raged across the seas. He stole a sliver of divine flame from the chariot of the sun, hiding it in the hollow of a fennel stalk, a simple plant, unremarkable, its hollow stem a fitting vessel for a gift meant for the humble. The fire glowed faintly, a secret pulsing, with quiet potential, warming nothing yet, but promising everything. Prometheus descended from Olympus, not with the fanfare of a god, but with the silence of a thief. He crossed valleys and forests, rivers and plains, the fennel stalk glowing faintly in the night. Each step was a risk, each gust of wind a threat. To extinguish the future he carried. When he reached the mortals, he chose no king or warrior to receive his gift. Instead, he knelt in the cave of a family, their hands stained with ash and bone, their eyes wide with hunger and wonder. He showed them how to strike flint, how to cradle the spark, how to feed it with dry leaves until it grew into a flame. They watched, their breath held, as the first tendrils of warmth reached toward them. That first fire was no roaring blaze, but a whisper, a tremble of hope that changed everything. Meat was cooked, its savor filling the air with new possibility. Tools were hardened in the flame, their edges sharper, their purpose clearer. Stories were told around the glow of embers, voices weaving tales that would outlast the night. Time itself shifted, no longer divided, only by day and night, but by the steady rhythm of the hearth. The cave was no longer just a shelter, it was a home, a place where light and warmth gave birth to community. Children were born into light, their first cries mingling with the crackle of fire. Elders passed on knowledge by its flicker, their words carving paths into the future. Questions emerged. Why does the fire dance? Where do the stars go in the day? What lies beyond the horizon? Wonder stirred, and with it, the world was no longer just endured. It was explored, questioned, shaped. On Olympus, the gods felt the shift. A ripple passed through their golden halls, a disturbance in the order of things. Zeus's gaze turned downward, and what he saw was not chaos, but awakening, not disorder, but imagination. And he was afraid. Prometheus had not given humanity a weapon. He had given them a future, one that threatened the divine order. Zeus's wrath was absolute, a storm held in check by cold calculation. When he discovered the theft, he did not hurl lightning or shout his rage. He planned a punishment slower, more enduring, more symbolic. Prometheus would not be struck down, he would be made an eternal warning. The Titan was captured and dragged to the edge of the world, where the Caucasus Mountains pierced the sky. There, Hephaestus, the god of the forge, bound him with shackles of divine metal, forged to be unbreakable, unyielding. No key, no mercy. Prometheus's arms were stretched wide, his chest open to the heavens, his body a canvas for divine retribution. Every day, an eagle Zeus's symbol descended from the clouds. Its talons tore into Prometheus's side, its beak devouring his liver. The pain was beyond words, a searing agony that burned through every nerve. Yet this was only half the sentence. Every night, his liver regenerated, not as healing, but as continuation. A cruel magic that ensured the torment would begin anew with each dawn. It was not merely punishment, it was a cycle, a mockery of the renewal Prometheus had gifted to humanity. He did not scream, he did not plead. That was his rebellion. He endured, his eyes fixed on the horizon, watching centuries pass. He saw humanity rise, their fires burning brighter with each generation. They built temples, forged swords, wrote poems. They worshipped fire, honored it, protected it. And in doing so, they honored him, their silent benefactor. Prometheus became a symbol, not just of defiance, but of sacrifice. A god who suffered for mortals. His pain was etched into history, not as punishment, but as legend. The eagle became part of the cycle, the mountain a monument, the sky a witness. He waited, bound in silence, knowing that one day Heracles would come, his strength breaking the chains that held the Titan captive. But even before his rescue, Prometheus had already won. What Zeus feared was not the fire itself, but what came. After, humans began to build, to dream, to question. Fire gave them control over their world, and with it came curiosity, ambition, invention. They forged metal, shaped it into tools and weapons. They built cities, their walls rising from the earth like prayers made solid. They tamed beasts harnessed. Rivers sculpted the land to their will. And they began to ask dangerous questions. Why do we worship the gods? What makes them worthy of our devotion? Fire gave them warmth, but more than that, it gave them vision, a new kind of hunger, a desire to shape their own destinies. They built altars not just to the gods, but to ideas, to justice, to laws born of human minds. They sculpted hope, carved it into stone and song. And Prometheus had seen it all along, had known that a single spark could ignite a revolution. The gods watched, some in silence, some in awe, some in fear. The fire did not just warm bodies, it awakened minds. And once a mind is awake, no mountain, no eagle, no chain can silence it. Humanity wrote their myths, sang their songs, passed down the tale of the Titan who gave them fire. With each retelling, Prometheus burned brighter, his sacrifice a beacon in the darkness. The myth of Prometheus is not just about fire. It is about boundaries and the courage to cross them for the sake of others. It is about love that defies. Order, about the cost of giving light to those left in the cold. Prometheus did not bring chaos, he brought potential. His punishment was not for the flame he stole, but for what it revealed. That power, once shared, cannot be taken back. Fire is not just flame. It is the memory of compassion, the cost of vision, the root of all human striving. Every flickering candle, every glowing hearth, every torch carried into the dark is an echo of that original theft, a reminder that kindness can wear the mask of rebellion. As you drift tonight, notice the soft glow of a light near you, a candle, a lamp, the quiet shine of the moon. Remember that long ago, a Titan suffered so that you might see in the dark. Thank you for resting here with this story. If it stirred your heart or warmed your thoughts, let it linger a little longer. Until the next tale, sleep gently, and may your dreams burn with the light of possibility. Demeter and Persephone, the myth of the seasons. The meadow was a canvas of life when Persephone laughed. Her voice wove through the air, bright and unburdened, mingling with the hum of bees and the rustle of wildflowers swaying in the warm breeze. She stood at the heart of spring, her hands gathering petals, narcissus, crocus, hyacinth, each bloom a small promise of eternity. The sky above was a boundless blue, unmarred by clouds, and the earth beneath her feet pulsed with vitality. Persephone was not alone, not afraid, not whispering to shadows or lost in thought. She was alive, radiant, the embodiment of youth and possibility. The world felt whole, as if it could never break. Then the earth sighed. It was not a roar, not a quake, but a gentle rupture, a soft exhalation from the depths. The grass parted like a curtain, and the ground opened with a sound like a held breath released. From that chasm rose Hades, god of the underworld, his presence not cloaked in menace, but in a quiet, unshakable solemnity. His eyes were deep as caverns, his voice resonant like stone smoothed by an endless river. He did not storm or threaten. He did not rage or demand. He simply reached out, his hand steady, deliberate, as if claiming something inevitable. Persephone vanished before her laughter could fade into a scream. Far above, Demeter felt it, not with her ears or eyes, but with the raw, unnameable instinct of a mother. It was as if a thread in her soul snapped, a cord broken in the heart of the world. The air grew heavy, the light dimmed, and a silence fell, a silence that screamed absence. She turned toward the meadow where her daughter had been, expecting to see her weaving through the flowers, her hair catching the sunlight. But there was nothing. No footprints pressed into the soft earth, no scattered petals marking a struggle. Only a stillness where life had been. The world did not end that day. It paused, holding its breath as if unsure how to continue. Demeter searched, not as a goddess who could command the winds or summon rivers, but as a mother, her steps heavy with human weight. She wandered through fields and forests, over hills and along forgotten paths. The earth responded to her grief. Trees bowed there, branches as she passed, their leaves trembling. Rivers slowed their currents, their songs fading to murmurs. The soil grew cold beneath her feet, as if it too mourned. The air thinned, carrying no scent of blossoms. Crops withered in their fields, their roots curling inward as if retreating from the world. Flowers refused to bloom, their buds sealed tight against the light. This was not Demeter's anger, it was her sorrow, a slow unmaking of the world she had nurtured. Villages felt the weight of her grief first. Livestock grew weak, their ribs stark against their hides. Fields turned to dust, cracked and barren, under a sun that seemed to have forgotten how to warm. People whispered of curses, of divine wrath, of punishment for sins they could not name. They lit fires to Demeter, offered grain and wine, prayed for her mercy. But she did not hear them. She was walking, searching, her voice calling Persephone's name into the wind. She named every flower she had ever planted, daisy, violet, rose, as if reciting their names could summon her daughter back. The silence that answered was a wound that deepened with each step. Once, a shepherd approached her, his face gaunt, his eyes hollow. In his arms was a child, small and shivering, her cheeks sunken from hunger. He did not speak, did not beg or question. He only knelt and placed the child at Demeter's feet, as if offering her to the goddess's care. Demeter paused, her heart a storm of grief and recognition. She knelt beside the child, her fingers brushing the girl's forehead, seeking to stir life as she once had. But no warmth came, no spark of green, no whisper of growth. Not even a tear fell from Demeter's eyes. She rose and continued her search, the child's face etched into her memory, a mirror of her own loss. The gods of Olympus watched in uneasy silence. Apollo, god of the sun, saw his light dim, its rays faltering as if unsure of their path. Artemis, huntress of the wild, found no deer in the forests, no birds in the skies. The world was emptying. Itself, and even Hermes, the fleet-footed messenger with a tongue of silver and a heart of mischief, grew quiet. Olympus, once vibrant with divine debate and laughter, became a mountain of tension, its peaks shrouded in unease. The world below was unraveling, and the gods felt its threads slipping through their fingers. At last, Demeter ascended to Olympus. Her face bore no trace of divine wrath, no thunder like Zeus's, no cold calculation like Athena's. It was empty, a void carved by loss. She stood before the assembled gods, her presence a weight that silenced even the wind. She asked only one thing, her voice steady but hollow. "Where is my daughter?" Zeus, king of the gods, answered with a rumble of thunder, his voice heavy with authority. "She is not lost." Demeter's gaze did not waver. "Then bring her back." Zeus hesitated, his eyes flickering with something unspoken. He knew the truth, as all gods did. Hades had taken Persephone, but it was not theft alone. There were rules, ancient and unyielding, woven into the fabric of the cosmos laws, of binding, of choice, of consequence. Zeus had not acted, had not interfered. His crime was not in taking, but in allowing, in giving silent permission for the underworld to claim its queen. In the underworld, Persephone sat in silence. The realm of Hades was not cruel, not a place of torment or chains. It was still, a world where time drifted like mist, where shadows moved with the slowness of centuries. She walked among spirits, their forms translucent, their voices whispers of lives long ended. There was no laughter. Here, no echo of the meadow's joy. Hades treated her not as a prisoner, but as a bride, his gaze steady, his presence constant. Yet she did not speak, her lips sealed by the weight of her new reality. One day she stood before him, her eyes meeting his without fear. "Why me?" she asked, her voice cutting through the stillness. Hades did not look away. "Because you were the only thing alive enough to live here." She did not respond, but his words lingered, heavy as the stone that surrounded them. He offered her comfort's music without melody, its notes hanging in the air like ghosts. Rooms filled with still, heavy air. Gardens that defied death. Trees stood with leaves of pale white, never falling, never growing. Statues lined the paths, their golden tears frozen in eternal weeping. Flowers bloomed in perfect stillness, their petals cold to the touch, refusing to wilt, but also refusing to grow. Persephone walked among them, her fingers tracing their edges, feeling their unyielding permanence. "You've made a world where nothing ends," she said, her voice soft but clear. "Because nothing begins," Hades replied, his tone not. Cruel but certain, as if stating a truth older than the gods themselves. One day he offered her a pomegranate, its skin red as spilled wine, its seeds glinting with the weight of myth. She turned it in her hands, feeling its cool weight, its promise of something irrevocable. "Will this change me?" she asked. "It will root you," he said, his voice steady, his eyes fixed on hers. She ate 6 seeds, each one a choice, each one a tether. As they settled in her chest, she felt the weight of 6 months, a rhythm of time that would bind her to this place and to the world above. Above, Demeter knelt in the fields, her hands pressed to the earth as if she could feel her daughter through the soil. She had torn herself apart, her essence bleeding into the land. Winter was not born of cold, but of her grief, a season carved from absence. Oceans grew restless, their waves crashing without rhythm. Mountains forgot how to echo, their voices swallowed by silence. The sky sagged, heavy with clouds that refused to weep. The world was no longer a place of growth, but of waiting, of holding its breath for a return that might never come. Zeus, pressed by the unraveling of the world and the weight of Demeter's gaze, finally acted. He sent Hermes, not as a warrior, but as a messenger, his feet swift, his words silver. Hermes descended to the underworld, his presence a flicker of light in the stillness. "She has eaten the fruit," Hades said, his voice calm, his eyes unyielding. "Then she will return," Hermes replied, "but only halfway." Hades did not smile, but there was a flicker of something in his gaze acceptance, perhaps, or understanding. Half of her is enough to change the world. When Persephone stepped back into the light, spring rose with her. Flowers unfurled in her footsteps, their colors vivid against the gray of winter. Bees stirred from their slumber, their hum a song of renewal. Rivers remembered their melodies, their waters dancing once more. The air softened, carrying the scent of blossoms and possibility. The world exhaled, alive again. Demeter held her daughter, her tears falling into Persephone's hair. For a moment, everything lived. Trees budded, fields turned green, the sky lifted. They spoke little, for grief and joy need no words. The touch of Persephone's hand against her mother's cheek was enough, a silent promise that she was here, that she was whole. But time cannot be held forever. 6 months later, Persephone kissed her mother's cheek and turned away. not as a victim dragged into darkness, but as a queen stepping into her realm. She did not descend, she returned, her steps steady, her heart divided but resolute. Demeter watched, her hands trembling, as the world held its breath and exhaled into winter, and so the cycle began anew. Grief and joy, departure and return, woven into the rhythm of the seasons, not ruled by weather, but by longing, by the pull of love and loss. Each year, the pain feels fresh, as if the wound has never healed. That is what love does. It forgets its own scars long enough to bleed again. Persephone grows older with each cycle, her steps surer, her gaze steadier. In the underworld, she walks with purpose, no longer flinching at shadows. The spirits call her queen, their voices soft but reverent. She tends the gardens of stone and root, her touch bringing a quiet life to the stillness. Though part of her yearns for the sun, for the meadow's warmth, she has learned to love the hush of the underworld, the weight of its silence. Hades walks beside her sometimes, not as captor but as companion, his presence a constant without. Demand. He does not reach for her hand again. He listens, his silence a space for her voice. Do you miss the sun? He asked once, his voice low, almost hesitant. Every day, she replied, her eyes meeting his without fear or sorrow. Then I will never ask you to forget it, he said, and in his words was a promise, unspoken but binding. Above, Demeter teaches the world how to wait. She no longer rages, no longer tears the earth apart in her grief. When Persephone is near, she tends the fields, coaxing life from the soil, her hands gentle but firm. When her daughter is gone, she lets the world sleep, its breath slow and quiet beneath a blanket of frost. She is not only the goddess of harvest, but of return, of the promise that what is lost will come again. The myth of Demeter and Persephone is not a cautionary tale, not a warning of divine caprice or mortal frailty. It is a rhythm, a song played in 4 parts: spring, summer, autumn, winter. Joy, sorrow, loss, reunion. It is the story of a mother's love, unending and unyielding, and a daughter's journey from childhood to queenship. It is the cycle of identity, of learning to hold 2 worlds within one heart. Each year, the world turns, and the story repeats. Persephone rises, and spring blooms. She returns, and winter falls. Demeter waits, her hands open, her heart a field that knows both harvest and frost. And in the underworld, Persephone reigns, her crown not of flowers but of stone, her rule not of light but of roots. Thank you for walking this myth with me tonight. Let it warm you like sunlight, breaking through spring's first dawn, and cool you like snow that carries the memory of green beneath its frost. Sleep well, and may your dreams bloom with the promise of return. Athena and Arachne, the weaving jewel. Welcome, seeker of stories, wanderer of ancient paths. As you settle into this moment, perhaps under the quiet glow of a lamp or the soft hush of a starlit night, know that you are exactly where you need to be. Thank you for pausing here, for choosing to weave your thoughts with the threads of myth. If you're new to these tales, share a glimpse of your world, your city, your sky, or what drew you to this story tonight. Let's step into a village long ago, where a mortal's hands dared to challenge the divine, and where silk became a story that never fades. Arachne was born with thread in her fingers, or so the villagers swore. She didn't learn to weave, she remembered, as if the knowledge was woven into her bones before her first breath. Her mother, a weaver herself, often said Arachne pulled patterns from the air, not from the loom. As a child, she sat by the spinning wheel, her small hands moving with a certainty that silenced the room. The villagers came not for her tapestries, at first, but to watch her hands nimble, precise, dancing with threads as if they were extensions of her soul. What she created wasn't just cloth. It was memory, myth, and meaning stitched into silk, each piece a world unto itself. Even as a girl, Arachne needed no guidance. Threads obeyed her the way rivers follow their banks, flowing effortlessly. Under her touch, her first tapestry, woven at an age when most children still clung to their mother's skirts, depicted a storm rolling over a valley. The villagers stood in awe, their breath caught in their throats. No one knew how she had captured it, the shadows of clouds racing across the hills, the bend of trees under the wind's weight, the electric tension of a sky about to break. Arachne had never left her village, never seen such a storm, yet her fabric breathed with its truth, as if she had plucked the scene from the god's own memories. She wove stories, not with words, but with color and motion. Her tapestries told of love and loss, of heroes forgotten by time, of skies that wept and seas that roared. Each thread was a choice, each pattern a confession. The gods themselves looked, down, their gazes lingering on her work, though they kept their silence for now. Her hands moved like a poet's pen, crafting worlds where mortals and immortals met, where the ordinary became divine. Word of her skill spread beyond the village, carried on the lips of merchants who traveled dusty roads to see her art. They didn't come to buy. How could they place a coin's value on something that seemed to pulse with life? They came to witness, to stand in the presence of creation. Her tapestries hung in the village square, catching the sunlight, their colors shifting as if alive. She became a legend wrapped in wool, her name whispered in markets and taverns far beyond her. Home, Arachne, the weaver. Arachne, the mortal who wove like a goddess. With fame came whispers, soft at first, but growing louder. Her skill was too perfect, too otherworldly. It must be divine, the villagers said, their voices tinged with awe and unease. No mortal hands move like that. Surely Athena herself has blessed her. They watched her work, their eyes searching for the shadow of a goddess in her steady hands, in the patterns that seemed to hum with secrets. One morning, as Arachne worked her loom under the open sky, a merchant asked, "Where did you learn this? Who taught you to weave such wonders?" Arachne paused, her fingers resting on the shuttle. "No one taught me," she said, her voice calm but firm, as if stating a fact as plain as the sun above. The merchant pressed, his voice hesitant. "Surely Athena, goddess of wisdom and craft, guided your hands?" Arachne's eyes met his, unflinching. "I am better than Athena." The words hung in the air, heavy as storm clouds. The silence that followed was the kind that folds into thunder, a quiet so profound it seemed the world held its breath. The villagers froze, their eyes wide, their hands clutching at cloaks and baskets. To compare oneself to a goddess was bold. To claim superiority was to tempt fate itself. It didn't take long for the words to reach Olympus. Athena heard them, her ears catching the echo of mortal pride from her golden perch. On Olympus, where her armor gleamed without rust and her wisdom never faltered, the challenge stung deeper than any battlefield wound. A mortal, a weaver from a nameless village, dared to claim her art surpassed that of the goddess of craft herself. Not in war, not in strategy, but in beauty, in the delicate dance of thread and loom. It was a wound to her divine pride, sharper than any spear. She descended to the mortal world, not in her warrior's armor, but cloaked in humility. She took the form of an old woman, her back hunched, her hair gray as ash, her hands trembling with the weight of years. She appeared in the village square as Arachne set up her loom, the morning sun casting golden threads across her work. The air was thick with the scent of wool and earth, and the villagers moved quietly, sensing something momentous. "You should be careful, child," the old woman whispered, her voice soft but heavy with warning. Words like those invite eyes from above. Arachne didn't pause, her hands moving like water over stone, each thread falling perfectly into place. "Then, let them look," she said, her voice steady, her eyes fixed on her work. The old woman leaned closer, her shadow falling across the loom. Even if those eyes belonged to the goddess of wisdom herself, Arachne's fingers stilled for a moment, but her gaze lifted, bold and unyielding. "I would welcome her gaze," she said, "and I would show her what true weaving is." The air shimmered. The old woman's form dissolved, her gray cloak falling away like mist. In her place stood Athena, goddess of wisdom and war, her eyes sharp as a blade, her presence a weight that pressed against the world. The villagers gasped and fled, their footsteps fading into the dust. The square was empty now, save for Arachne and the goddess, two figures bound by a challenge that could not be undone. "Then weave," Athena said, her voice not angry, but resolute, a command that carried the weight of divine authority. "Show me." And so began the duel. Two looms, side by side, their wooden frames creaking under the tension of thread. Two women, one divine, one defiant, their hands moving with a purpose that silenced the world around them. The village fell quiet, the wind holding its breath, the birds pausing their songs. Time itself seemed to slow, as if unwilling to rush toward the outcome. Athena wove with the grace of eternity. Her tapestry was a hymn to Olympus, a celebration of divine order. She crafted the throne of Zeus, its golden splendor gleaming under a sky of woven stars. She wove her own birth, springing fully formed from Zeus's skull, wisdom incarnate. The borders of her tapestry shimmered with justice, each thread a testament to the gods' glory, their triumphs over chaos, their rule over the cosmos. Her work was flawless, a mirror of divine perfection, its colors radiant as if lit from within. But Arachne chose a different path. Her tapestry was no ode to divine glory, but a mirror held to the gods' flaws. She wove not the triumphs of Olympus, but its shadows, its truths too raw for divine ears. Her threads told of Zeus, descending in the guise of animals, a swan, a bull, a shower of gold, to deceive and seduce mortals. She wove Poseidon's wrath, his trident shaking the earth, splitting mountains in fits of rage. She showed Dionysus, leading mortals into madness, their minds unraveling in the ecstasy of his wine. Her tapestry pulsed with life, with truth unflinching, uncomfortable, undeniable. It was not flattery, but revelation, a bold accusation woven in silk and color. She didn't lie, but she didn't bow. As they wove, the day stretched into dusk, the sky blushing as if ashamed of the truths unfolding below. The gods watched from Olympus, their silence heavy with unease. Even Apollo, god of the sun, dimmed his light, uncertain whether to illuminate the end of this contest. The air grew thick, charged with the weight of creation and defiance. When the looms fell silent, Athena stepped toward Arachne's tapestry. She did not speak, did not rage. She walked slowly, her fingers brushing the edge of the cloth. The threads trembled under her touch, as if alive, as if aware of the goddess's scrutiny. The tapestry was flawless, its colors vivid, its stories sharp as a blade. It was not just art, it was a challenge, a mirror held to the gods' imperfections. Athena's face remained unreadable, but her eyes burned with something unspoken. Then, with a single motion, she tore the tapestry from the loom, not in rage, but in refusal, a rejection of the truth Arachne had woven. The fabric fell in a heap, its colors muted against the earth. "Is truth a crime?" Arachne asked, her voice steady, her eyes meeting Athena's without fear. "No," Athena said, her voice low, almost a whisper. "But pride is." She stepped closer, her presence towering, though her form was no taller than Arachne's. "You are bold," she said. "Too bold for a mortal." Arachne stood silent, her chin lifted, her hand still stained with the dye of her work. Athena raised her hand, her fingers brushing Arachne's forehead. "Then weave forever," she said. In that moment, Arachne changed. Her body shrank, her limbs multiplied, her form twisting into something new. She became a spider, small and delicate, her thread now spun from within, not cursed, but transformed. Her loom would never break, her thread would never run out. She would tell her stories forever, in corners, in shadows, in the quiet places where no one looks. The villagers returned, their whispers filling the square. They spoke of the duel, of Arachne's pride, of Athena's judgment. But they also spoke of the tapestries hers, unflinching and true, Athena's, radiant and divine. The story grew, weaving itself into the fabric of myth, a tale of mortal courage and divine retribution. Arachne weaves now in attics and underleaves, in the forgotten corners of the world. Her webs catch the light, delicate and strong each. One a story told in silence. They speak of gods and their flaws, of truth and its cost, of pride and its legacy. Her silk clings to the edge of vision, a reminder that even in punishment there is creation. Even in transformation there is memory. To this day, her webs shimmer in the morning dew, fragile yet enduring. They are not punishment but testament, not vengeance but legacy. Each thread is a story, each web a tapestry, spun in the quiet places where the world still listens. The myth of Athena and Arachne is not a warning against pride, but a meditation on creation, on the courage to speak, truth through art, and the cost of challenging the divine. It is a story of two weavers, one bound by immortality, the other by defiance, whose threads still tangle in the fabric of the world. Athena, goddess of wisdom, learned that even a mortal's hands can rival the divine. Arachne, mortal turned spider, learned that truth, once woven, cannot be undone. As you drift tonight, notice the delicate webs in the corners of your world, a spider's thread catching the light, a silent story spun in silk. Remember Arachne, whose hands wove beauty bold enough to challenge a goddess, and whose legacy endures in every quiet corner. Thank you for walking this myth with me. If it stirred your heart or wove itself into your thoughts, let it linger a little longer. Sleep well, and may your dreams be as soft and strong as silk. Apollo and Daphne, love that took root welcome. Wanderer of myths, seeker of stories that linger like shadows in the heart. As you settle into this moment, perhaps under the quiet glow of twilight or in the soft embrace of a starlit night, know that you are exactly where you belong. Thank you for pausing here, for choosing to walk the paths where gods and mortals collide, where love and freedom weave a tale that never fades. If you're new to these stories, share a piece of your world, your city, your sky, or what drew you to this myth tonight. Let's step into a forest long ago, where a god's desire met a nymph's defiance, and where a tree became a testament to both. They say desire moves fast, a flame that leaps from heart to heart, consuming all in its path. But fear moves faster, a wind that outruns even the swiftest hunter. Apollo, god of music, prophecy, and light, knew desire well. Golden-haired and radiant, he walked the earth with a presence that stilled rivers and hushed the wild. Animals lowered their heads as he passed, their instincts bowing to his divinity. His voice could silence mountains. His songs bend emotions like reeds in a storm. Poets invoked his name, their verses trembling with awe. Kings sought his favor, their crowns dim in his glow. Mortals feared and loved him in equal measure, their hearts caught in the orbit of his brilliance. Apollo carried a lyre on his back, its strings humming with unspoken melodies. His steps were certain, his gaze piercing, as if he could see not. just the present, but the futures woven into it. He was harmony itself, a god whose beauty was not just in his form, but in the order he brought to chaos. Yet even gods have blind spots, and Apollo's was pride of belief that his light could never be dimmed, his will never refused. One afternoon, beneath a cloudless sky, he turned his gaze to a boy with wings, a deity smaller than most, armed not with a sword, but with arrows and an unyielding spirit. Eros Cupid to the Romans stood with a bow in hand, his eyes sharp with mischief. Apollo laughed, his voice ringing like a bell across the heavens. "What have you to do with war or power?" He mocked. "Leave arrows to those who hunt." "Little god." Eros said nothing, but his silence was heavy with promise. In that quiet, a lesson was born, not in words, but in the pull of a bowstring, the flight of an arrow, the spark of divine retribution. Eros chose Apollo for his target, his hands steady as he drew 2 arrows from his quiver. One was tipped with gold, its point gleaming with the power to inflame a love, to set hearts ablaze with longing. The other was tipped with lead, its dull, weight crafted to inspire aversion, to turn desire to dust. The golden arrow found Apollo, piercing his heart with a fire that burned brighter than his own light. The leaden arrow sought Daphne, a nymph of forests and freedom, filling her with a dread that chilled her soul. And so it began. When Apollo saw Daphne, the world fell away. The woods, the sky, the soft hum of nature all faded into shadow. He saw only her, a vision of wild grace. Daphne, child of the river god Peneus, was a nymph woven from the earth itself. Her steps left no trace on the forest floor. Her breath misted like dew in the morning air. Her hair flowed like a river, catching the sunlight in shades of green and gold. She was a creature of solitude, her joy found in the whisper of leaves, the rush of streams, the quiet company of trees. She lived unclaimed, her heart unbound by mortal or divine desires. Men did not frighten her. She simply preferred their distance, their voices a faint echo against the symphony of the wild. But now she ran, not with the playful grace of a nymph teasing a suitor, but with the raw, desperate speed of a deer. In winter, her feet pounded the earth, her breath sharp and quick, her eyes darting to every shadow. The wind did not resist her, it followed, weaving through the trees as if urging her onward. The forest parted, not for Apollo's divinity, but for Daphne's desperation, its branches bending to shield her path. Dryads watched from the edges, their heads bowed in sorrow. Nymphs turned their backs, their silence a quiet prayer. Even the river god Peneus, her father, rose from his waters, his eyes heavy with grief, but he did not stop her. Some choices must be completed to be transformed. Apollo chased, his golden light cutting through the forest's gloom. His voice called after her, each word a note in a song of longing. "Daphne, wait," he cried. "You don't understand. I adore you. I'll worship you. I'll make you eternal, a star in my sky, a muse for my songs." His words were sincere, each one heavy with the weight of his enchanted heart. But they were the words of a god consumed by desire, not love, a passion clouded by obsession, a devotion that sought to possess rather than cherish. Daphne heard none of it, not truly. His promises were chains, his words a pressure that tightened around her heart. Her breath shortened, her legs burned, and still she ran. The forest blurred around her, a tapestry of green and shadow. She stumbled, once, her foot catching on a root, but she caught herself, her hands scraping against bark. Her hair tangled in branches, tearing free in strands that floated behind her like a banner of defiance. The earth seemed to pulse beneath her, urging her forward, whispering of freedom just beyond her reach. Apollo's footfalls grew louder, his breath closer, a heat that pressed against her back. She could feel him, his radiance, his hunger, his certainty that she would yield. The forest, once her sanctuary, now seemed too small, its paths too narrow to hold her flight. Her heart pounded, not just with fear, but with a fierce resolve to remain her own. When she felt his hand brush the air just behind her, she cried out not to him, but to the gods, to the earth, to the wild that had always been her home. "Change me," she pleaded, her voice raw, trembling with the weight of her choice. "Let me be free." The gods heard. The earth heard. The air shifted, heavy with the weight of divine response. Her toes sank into the soil, rooting deep, into the heart of the world. Her legs stiffened, their warmth turning to the cool strength of wood. Her skin hardened, bark forming where flesh had been, its texture rough and unyielding. Her hair reached upward, leafing into green, catching the sunlight in a crown of leaves. Her fingers stretched into branches, their tips brushing the sky. Her heart still beat, but slowly now, like sap pulsing through the heartwood of a tree. She was no longer nymph, but laurel-rooted, eternal, free. Apollo stopped, his breath catching in his throat. Where Daphne had been, there was now a tree, its trunk still warm, its leaves trembling as if her spirit lingered within. He reached out, his fingers brushing the bark, feeling the faint pulse of life beneath. "Daphne," he whispered, his voice breaking, not with anger, but with awe. She was gone, yet not gone transformed, unreachable, yet still present in every leaf, every branch. He stood before her, his golden light dimmed, his pride humbled. "If you won't be mine," he said softly, "you will be my symbol." He plucked a sprig of her leaves, weaving them into a crown that would become his emblem. He vowed that the laurel would never wither, even when other trees shed their green. Its leaves would crown victors, poets, and kings, a testament to her eternal presence. He wrote songs beneath her shade, their melodies heavy with longing and regret. He named her tree sacred, its branches a sanctuary for his music, his prophecy, his light. The world moved on, its rhythms unbroken. Daphne swayed in the wind, her leaves whispering secrets to those who paused to listen. She was rooted, unyielding. Her spirit curled deep within the heartwood, silent but watching. Apollo returned often, his lyre in hand, his songs a quiet offering. Sometimes he wept, his tears falling like dew on her roots. Sometimes he laughed, as if hoping she might hear, might answer. And perhaps she did, in the rustle of her leaves, the sway of her branches. But she never spoke, her silence a choice as fierce as her flight. In that silence, a new kind of love grew, not the consuming fire of desire, but a quiet devotion that asked nothing in return. It was a love that stayed, that honored her freedom, that learned to see her not as a prize, but as a presence. Apollo, god of light, learned to love without possessing, to sing without expecting an answer. Daphne, nymph turned tree, remained herself, her roots deep, her branches reaching for the sky. Love did not win, nor did freedom triumph alone. What remained was something in between, a longing turned to legend, a chase that ended not in union, but in understanding. The myth of Apollo and Daphne is not a tale of conquest or defeat, but of transformation, of a god humbled by his own desire, and a nymph who chose eternity over surrender. It reminds us that some pursuits end not in possession, but in reverence. That the greatest devotion is to let what we love remain untouchable. To this day, the laurel stands, its leaves evergreen, a symbol of victory and poetry, of freedom and sacrifice. In every forest, in every crown woven from its branches, Daphne's story lives a quiet defiance, a testament to the power of choice. Apollo's songs still echo, carried on the wind, but they are softer now, tempered by the wisdom of loss. As you drift tonight, notice the trees around you, their branches swaying in the breeze, their leaves catching the light. Remember Daphne, whose flight became her freedom, whose transformation became her legacy. Thank you for walking this myth with me. If it stirred your heart or whispered to your soul, let it linger a little longer. Sleep well, and may your dreams be still, your heart unchased, your spirit as free as a laurel reaching for the sky. Hera and her jealousy welcome, seeker of ancient tales, wanderer of the divine and the human. As you settle into this moment, perhaps under the soft glow of a candle or the quiet embrace of a starlit night, know that you are exactly where you need to be. Thank you for pausing here, for choosing to linger where the gods' stories intertwine with mortal truths. If you're new to these myths, share a glimpse of your world, your city, your sky, or what drew you to this tale tonight. Let's step into the halls of Olympus, where a queen's pride and pain wove a legend as enduring as the heavens themselves. Hera was not born jealous. She was born regal, a daughter of Titans, her presence a force that could hush the wildest storms. As queen of the heavens, sister and wife to Zeus, she carried herself with a dignity that commanded reverence. Her gaze could still the winds. Her presence made even the proudest gods lower their eyes. She did not walk, she reigned, her every step a declaration of authority, her every word a law carved in the clouds. Born to Cronus and Rhea, Hera knew the weight of power from her earliest days. She had seen it devour its own, her father swallowing, her siblings whole, his fear of prophecy, a hunger that consumed even his children. When she was freed from his darkness, raised again into the light, Hera did not weep or cower. She observed, her young eyes sharp, learning that even immortals could fall, that even titans could be broken. This knowledge became her armor, forged in silence, tempered by survival. When she ascended to the throne of Olympus, she wore her title not as a crown, but as a shield. Her throne, carved from cloud and discipline, stood as a testament to her strength. Her authority was not loud like Zeus's thunder, or sharp like Athena's wisdom. It was still, a quiet force that reshaped the air around her. When she spoke, the heavens listened. When she watched, gods and mortals alike adjusted their posture, their words, their thoughts. Hera was not just queen, she was the heartbeat of Olympus, the order that held its chaos together. But power is not peace, and love, when betrayed, becomes a blade that cuts deeper than any mortal wound. Zeus, king of the gods, was thunder and desire, a force of nature whose gaze roamed the earth with insatiable hunger. He did not conquer with armies, but with seduction, taking the forms of eagle, bull, swan, or golden ring to claim what caught his eye. Each time he slipped away from Olympus, he returned with excuses spun from stormlight, his words as fleeting as the clouds he commanded. And Hera watched, each time. She watched the sky darken as he left her side, his absences marked by the flicker of lightning on distant horizons. She saw his disguises feathers, horns, shimmering drops of gold, and the lies they carried. She saw the children born of his wanderings, their faces a mirror of his divine spark, their existence a wound to her pride. At first, she questioned him, her voice not accusatory but curious, seeking to understand the heart of the god she had chosen. "Why do you go?" she asked, her words soft, her eyes searching. He answered with a smile that did not reach his soul. "Because I am the sky, and the sky touches everything." Hera smiled in return, but the gesture was hollow, her eyes untouched by warmth. Each betrayal chipped away at her, not with the sharp pain of a single blow, but with the slow erosion of dignity. The whispers of Olympus, the glances of other gods, the songs that celebrated Zeus's conquests, they all carved into her, a relentless tide wearing down stone. Io was one of the first, a mortal girl, transformed into a cow to hide her from Hera's gaze, guarded by Argus of the 1,000 eyes. Hera set the monster to watch her, not out of hatred for Io, but out of a deeper wound, the humiliation of being made a fool. When Hermes, swift and silver-tongued, freed Io by slaying Argus, Hera mourned her loyal guardian. She took his eyes and wove them into the peacock's tail, a crown of vigilance that would forever mark her grief. Even in punishment, she honored her own. Semele, another mortal, burned to ash when she demanded to see Zeus in his divine form. Hera did not strike her directly. She planted a seed of doubt in Semele's mind, a question whispered in the quiet of night. If he truly loves you, why won't he show himself as he is? It was not wrath, but revelation, a truth that consumed Semele in fire. Hera's hand was unseen, but her intent was clear, to expose the fragility of mortal desire in the face of divine power. Then came Alcmene, mother of Heracles, whose very name became a song of Zeus's infidelity. Hera's torment of Heracles began in his cradle and followed him through his trials, each labor a mark of her presence. But who could blame the storm for drowning a name that echoed through Olympus, celebrated as a hero while Hera's dignity was reduced to whispers? In Heracles, she saw not just a child, but an anthem of her erasure, a living reminder of Zeus's wandering heart. It wasn't jealousy, though the myths call it so. It was erosion, the slow decay of a queen's pride. In the face of public betrayal, the weight of eyes that saw her pain but looked away, the songs that praised Zeus's conquests but never questioned his faithlessness. They called her vengeful, cruel, a goddess of wrath. They never called him faithless, never named the betrayal that fueled her fire. So Hera responded, not with the chaos of thunder, but with the precision of a weaver's shuttle. Her wrath was not wild. It was choreography, each step calculated, each punishment a carefully crafted message. She turned pain into planter, anger a loom on which she wove her legacy. When Heracle Stott was a baby, she sent serpents to his cradle, their scales glinting in the moonlight. He strangled them, his infant hands impossibly strong, and the mortals cheered his victory. But no one asked why a queen would send death to a child, what it meant to see her throne, her bed, her name, diminished by the celebration of another's seed. Each trial Heracles faced bore her signature, not because he deserved to suffer, but because the world needed to remember whose throne stood beside Zeus's. She shaped his legend through struggle, her obstacles forging him into a hero. In a way, she became his second mother, not of nurture, but of narrative, her hand guiding the story that would echo through time. The labors of Heracles, slaying the Nemean lion, capturing the Erymanthean boar, cleaning the Augean stables, were as much her creation as his triumph, a testament to her power to shape myth even in her pain. Her myths are filled with fury, with peacocks screaming in temple gardens, their tails a constellation of eyes watching the world. They speak of winds that refuse to calm, of vows that taste like salt on the tongue. But beneath the stories of wrath, there is an ache, a quiet grief that runs deeper than anger. Hera watched women become constellations to escape Zeus's desire Callisto among the stars. Europa carried across seas, Dino hidden behind golden rain. She saw daughters, born of lightning and rain, their existence a reminder of her husband's divided heart. She heard the whispers of Olympus, the sidelong glances of gods who knew but said nothing. And yet, she stayed. She loved Zeus, and that was her tragedy. To be queen of the gods, immortal and radiant, yet compared to every mortal who caught his wandering eye. To hold the heavens in her hands, yet never fully hold his gaze. Her immortality was a crown, but not a shield against betrayal. Her power was vast, but not enough to claim exclusivity. She fought not just against his lovers, but against being forgotten, against the reduction of her story to a footnote in Zeus's endless conquests. Each obstacle she placed before Heracles, each punishment she wove for Zeus's lovers, was a plea. See me. Remember me. Do not erase me. Her actions were not just vengeance, but a demand for recognition, a refusal to let her dignity be swept away by the tide of his infidelity. She was not merely the jealous queen of myth. She was a goddess fighting to preserve her place in a world that celebrated her betrayer. In temples, mortals prayed to her, not for wrath, but for protection. They invoked her name in marriage vows, in the quiet moments before childbirth, in the hopes of a home unbroken. They knew her not as vengeful, but as enduring, a goddess who understood the weight of love and loss. Beneath her anger was a heart that had borne what many mortals knew too well, to love someone who cannot be held, to carry pride and pain in the same breath. Hera walked still, not in the clouds of Olympus, but in the vows of those who pledged their hearts, in the fingers of women braiding their hair before a wedding, in the quiet prayers of wives lighting candles in the dark. Her presence lingers in the eyes of anyone who knows what it is to stand tall despite betrayal, to hold dignity in the face of erosion. She is the queen who endured, whose story is not just one of jealousy, but of resilience, of a goddess who shaped myths through her, pain and refused to be forgotten. The myth of Hera is not a tale of simple vengeance, but a meditation on power, love, and the cost of being seen. It is the story of a queen who loved fiercely, who fought not just for her throne, but for her name, her narrative, her place in the cosmos. Each peacock's cry, each storm she stirred, each trial she set was a declaration. I am here. I am Hera. I will not fade. As you drift tonight, notice the quiet strength in the world around you, the steady flame of a candle, the unyielding roots of a tree, the stars that shine despite the dark. Remember Hera, whose pain became her power, whose story endures in every vow, every prayer, every heart that refuses to be erased. Thank you for walking this myth with me. If it stirred your soul or warmed your thoughts, let it linger a little longer. Sleep well, and may your dreams be gentle, your heart respected, your presence never diminished. Aphrodite, Ares, and Hephaestus, the triangle of the gods, welcome, wanderer of myths, seeker of tales that burn and linger. As you settle into this moment, perhaps, under the quiet flicker of a lamp or the soft hush of a moonlit night, know that you are exactly where you belong. Thank you for pausing here, for choosing to walk the paths where divine hearts clash and fracture. If you're new to these stories, share a piece of your world, your city, your sky, or what drew you to this myth tonight. Let's step into the halls of Olympus, where beauty, love, and betrayal wove a tapestry that echoes through time. Beauty is rarely simple, a fleeting gift that dazzles and disrupts. And love never is. Its threads tangled with desire, duty, and the ache of Pentio. The unspoken. Aphrodite, born of sea foam and sky, stepped into Olympus and shifted its balance. Her arrival was not a whisper, but a wave, crashing over the divine halls with a radiance that stilled even the gods. Where she walked, desire followed, trailing. In her wake like a tide, flowers bloomed where none had grown, their petals unfurling as if drawn by her breath. Laughter lingered longer in her presence, its notes brighter, sharper, but so did longing, a shadow that clung to her light. She emerged from the sea fully formed, her beauty not just a gift but a burden, a force that reshaped the world around her. The gods called her irresistible, their eyes caught in her glow, their voices hushed in awe. Yet few understood the weight she carried, to be seen by all but truly known by none. Her beauty was a mirror, reflecting the desires of those who gazed upon her, but rarely their hearts. Zeus, king of the gods, saw her power and sought to contain it. He arranged her marriage to Hephaestus, the crippled craftsman, god of the forge, whose brilliance burned in silence while others danced in the light. It was a political union, a choice made not for love but for stability, to tether Aphrodite's chaos to Hephaestus's steady hands. Zeus believed the match would neutralize her, that the quiet smith would stir no conflict, his forge a safe harbor for her wildfire. Hephaestus was kind in his way. He crafted wonders for her, a throne of gold that gleamed like the sun, a chamber lit by eternal coals that cast a warm glow across her face. His hands, calloused from the forge, shaped gifts of beauty and precision, each one a testament to his devotion. He never raised his voice, never demanded her heart, but he never danced, never laughed with the abandon she craved. His touch was cautious, as if he feared she might dissolve in his arms, a fragile dream too delicate for his rough hands. Aphrodite, though divine, felt the weight of being seen but not known, her heart a tide caught in a harbor that could not hold its waves. In this silence, Ares came. The god of war was everything Hephaestus was not: bold, loud, unapologetic. His scars were medals, his laughter a blade that cut through the stillness. Where Hephaestus crafted with patience, shaping metal with fire and time, Ares charged, his presence a storm that swept away restraint. He saw Aphrodite not as an ornament to be admired, but as a tempest, a force as wild and untamed as his own heart. He did not wait for permission, did not ask twice. His gaze met hers with a hunger that matched her own, a recognition that sparked something dangerous and alive. Their affair began like lightning bright, sudden, impossible to contain. They met in rebellion, under moonless skies, behind columns of rose marble, on shores where waves whispered their names. Aphrodite laughed with him, her voice a melody that echoed through the night. Ares listened, his eyes fixed on her, not with caution but with reverence, as if she were a battlefield he longed to understand. They did not speak of Hephaestus, did not mention the forge that glowed far away. In their stolen moments, they pretended. The world was theirs alone, a fleeting dream woven from desire and defiance. But Olympus listens, Olympus sees. The gods, for all their power, are not immune to whispers, and secrets have a way of rising to the light. Helios, the sun god, saw their embrace, his golden gaze piercing the shadows where they hid. He carried the truth to Hephaestus, his words a spark that fell into the forge of the craftsman's heart. Hephaestus did not rage. He did not confront or shout. He created. In the solitude of his forge, where firelight danced across his face, he worked. In silence, his focus sharper than any blade. He spun wire fine as spiderweb, each strand delicate yet unbreakable. He shaped metal that shimmered like mist, its surface catching the light in a way that made it invisible until it struck. With hands that had crafted the weapons of Olympus, he wove a net light as air, strong as steel, a trap that could not be seen or broken. He called it a gift, a canopy for their bed, and set it above the place where Aphrodite and Ares met, its threads waiting in the dark. When the lovers came together again, their laughter filling the air, the net fell. It entangled them, their bodies caught in a web of gold and shame. Naked, exposed, they could not move, their passion frozen in the light of their betrayal. Hephaestus summoned the gods, his voice steady, his face unreadable. One by one, they came, Poseidon with brows raised, Hermes chuckling behind his hand, Apollo averting his gaze, Dionysus swaying with wine and amusement. They stood before the trapped lovers, their laughter echoing through the halls of Olympus, sharp and merciless. The gods jeered, their voices a chorus of mockery, but beneath the noise was unease. No one mocked Hephaestus to his face, his quiet strength a wall none dared to breach. No one defended Aphrodite, her beauty now a spotlight that burned rather than warmed. No one questioned Ares, whose shame drove him to silence. Humiliation was louder than heartbreak, its weight heavier than any chain. Aphrodite said nothing, her lips pressed into a thin line, her eyes fixed on a corner of the room. Her silence was not surrender, but a shield, a refusal to plead or explain. Ares vanished, fleeing to Thrace, to the noise of war, to battles where wounds could drown his shame. Hephaestus looked at the net, at his creation, at the goddess he had called his wife. In his silence was not victory but resignation, a quiet acknowledgement that love could not be forged like metal, could not be held by even the strongest chains. The net fell, its threads glinting as they dropped to the floor. The gods dispersed, their laughter fading into whispers. The story remained, a scar on the heart of Olympus. Aphrodite returned to her temple, alone. She bathed in milk and salt, the water washing away the sting of exposure, but not the ache of being seen without being understood. She brushed her hair with trembling fingers, each stroke a reminder of her solitude. She lit no incense, offered no apologies. Standing before her mirror, she did not smile, her reflection a stranger who had been loved, desired, but never truly known. The gods' gazes shifted when she passed, their eyes sliding away, their whispers softer, but no less sharp. Nymphs giggled, more quietly, their laughter a blade that cut without touching. Mortals still prayed to her, their voices pleading for love, for passion, for the spark she embodied. But their tone was different now, tinged with caution, as if her story had made her less divine, more fragile. Aphrodite wandered Olympus, no longer the center of its light, but a shadow cast by whispers, her beauty a weight she could not set down. Hephaestus returned to his forge, the firelight his only companion. He built new things armor, chains, walls creations without emotion, without the risk of betrayal. His silence became legend, a fortress as strong as the metal he shaped. When asked about the net, about Aphrodite, he would only say, "Even gold can burn," his voice low, his eyes fixed on the coals. The sparks flew, the flames hissed, but his hands paused sometimes, hovering over the anvil as if searching for something lost, a warmth that no forge could recreate. Ares sought solace in war, his scars a map of forgetfulness. In the clash of swords, the roar of battle, he drowned the memory of shame, of laughter that cut deeper than any blade. But even he could not outrun the past. One day, Aphrodite passed his temple, not to see him, not to speak, but simply to walk the path. Nearby, he stood behind a column, watching, his eyes tracing the curve of her silhouette. They did not speak, did not need to. The memory of their lightning, their rebellion, hung between them, a thread that could not be broken. And that was enough. This myth is not just about beauty, lust, or pride. It is about the echo of betrayal, the softness that hardens when trust is broken, the silence that grows between those who once tried to be kind. It is about hearts that fracture, not with a shatter, but with a slow drift, like embers cooling in the dark. Even among gods, love is not simple. It is a tide that pulls, a fire that burns, a net that binds but cannot hold. Aphrodite, Ares, and Hephaestus remain, their story woven into the fabric of Olympus. Aphrodite's beauty still draws prayers, but her heart carries the weight of solitude. Ares' battles rage, but his scars whisper of a moment he cannot forget. Hephaestus' forge burns, but its flames cannot warm the emptiness he shaped. Their triangle is not a tale of victory or defeat, but of longing, of the spaces between desire and duty, of the fragile balance that even gods cannot maintain. As you drift tonight, notice the flicker of a flame, the glow of a star, the quiet beauty of the world around you. Remember Aphrodite, whose radiance could not shield her heart. Ares, whose strength could not outrun shame. And Hephaestus, whose creations could not hold love. Thank you for walking this myth with me. If it stirred your soul or warmed your thoughts, let it linger a little longer. Sleep well, and may your dreams be soft, your heart unbroken, your spirit free from the nets that bind. Dionysus, the god of madness and ecstasy, welcome, wanderer of myths, seeker of tales that pulse with the heartbeat of the divine. As you settle into this moment, perhaps under the flicker of a lantern, or the quiet embrace of a starlit night, know that you are exactly where you belong. Thank you for pausing here, for choosing to dance in the shadows of stories that awaken the soul. If you're new to these tales, share a glimpse of your world, your city, your sky, or what drew you to this myth tonight. Let's step into the wild, where a god born twice brought ecstasy and madness, laughter and tears, to a world that both feared and craved him. Dionysus was born twice, each birth a story of fire and miracle. First, from Semele, a mortal princess who loved Zeus and dared to see his divine form unveiled. Her love burned bright, but his truth burned brighter, reducing her to ash in a blaze of godly radiance. Yet from her ashes, Zeus preserved their unborn child, stitching him into his thigh, a cradle of divine flesh. There Dionysus grew, nurtured by the pulse of a god, reborn through pain and wonder. When he emerged, he was no ordinary deity. He arrived not with a whisper, but with a pulse, a rhythm that stirred the earth. He carried no weapons, only vines that curled like promises. No sermons, only laughter that echoed like a storm. His followers came not with oaths, but with dance, their feet bare, their hearts unbound. Dionysus was the god of wine, of theater, of release, a deity of wildness that blooms where repression festers, of ecstasy that rises from silence, of madness that comes when the soul is denied its truth. He was not a god of order, but of transformation, a force that shattered the masks mortals wore to survive. His presence was a song, a drumbeat, a cry in the night that called to the hidden parts of the heart. He traveled the world, not to conquer, but to awaken, his footsteps leaving trails of ivy and longing. Cities opened their gates to him with joy, their streets alive with song and wine. Others closed their walls in fear, sensing the danger in his unbound spirit. Those who welcomed him tasted joy, a fleeting freedom that burned like fire. Those who denied him tasted ruin, their resistance crumbling under the weight of his truth. He dressed not in the armor of warriors or the silk of kings, but in ivy that clung to his shoulders, in the skins of panthers that spoke of the wild. He arrived not with thunder, but with rhythm tambourines shaking the air, flutes weaving melodies that pulled at the soul, bare feet stirring dust into clouds. His procession glowed in the twilight, torches dancing like stars fallen to earth. Women sang, their voices rising and falling like waves. Men joined, their faces painted, their bodies swaying, rules forgotten in the heat of his presence. They came to forget the weight of their lives, to remember the fire in their blood, to feel everything: grief, joy, madness, all at once. Dionysus moved from land to land, his name shifting like the seasons. Bacchus in Rome, Liber in the fields, a god with many faces, because what he touched could not be contained in a single name. In Phrygia, they built altars adorned with mirrors, and wine bowls, reflecting his duality, god and mortal, light and shadow. In Lydia, they painted their faces with ash and honey, their rituals a blend of reverence and revelry. In Thrace, they climbed cliffs to howl his name into the wind, there, voices echoing like a storm. In the Aegean islands, they bathed his statues in the sea, washing away the dust of silence, renewing his presence with salt and tide. His rites were strange to those who stood outside, who saw only chaos in the dance. Women drunk on divine. Ecstasy left their looms and hearths, running barefoot into the woods. They tore bark from trees, their hands stained with sap, their cries a shedding of the skin they wore in daily life. Men, though fewer, joined them, their faces painted, their bodies bare, their roles as fathers and sons forgotten in the pulse of the moment. This was not chaos, it was ritual, a rhythm born of memory and pain. They called it mania, but it was mourning given form, the grief of mortality made tangible. It was the ache of pretending to be whole, of burying the soul's truth to survive. The world's demands. Dionysus's rites were a breaking open, a celebration of the unchained spirit, a space where the heart could scream and sing in equal measure. His followers did not abandon the world, they revealed it, stripping away the masks of propriety to expose the raw, beating heart beneath. Not all welcomed him. In Thebes, King Pentheus scoffed at the god, his laughter sharp with disdain. He called Dionysus a fraud, a wanderer with no throne, no power worth fearing. He forbade the rites, silenced the songs, tore down the vines that curled through the city streets. He jailed the followers, their wrists bound, their voices stilled. But Dionysus smiled, his eyes glinting with quiet thunder. He stepped into Thebes with bare feet, his presence a tide that could not be held back. He did not strike with flame or sword. He struck with frenzy, a madness that seeped into the city like wine into cloth. The women of Thebes left their homes, their eyes wild, their laughter sharp as blades. They climbed the mountains, their feet bleeding on the stones, their hands tearing animals apart with the strength born of divine release. Mothers, daughters, queens, they danced in circles that never ended, their songs wordless, their lips stained red with the fruit of the vine. They were no longer bound by the roles they had played. They were free, if only for a moment, in the ecstasy of Dionysus. Pentheus, curious despite his scorn, disguised himself to watch. He dressed as a woman, his face veiled, his steps cautious, hoping to spy on the madness without being seen. But madness sees all, its gaze piercing the masks of kings and mortals alike. The women saw through him, their eyes burning with the god's fire. They saw not a king but prey, a figure who dared to stand against the tide. Led by Agava, Pentheus's own mother, they tore him limb from limb, their hands once gentle, once skilled at weaving and blessing, now red with his blood. Only later, when the trance lifted, did Agave see her son's face in the ruin she held. Her scream shattered the mountain air, a sound that echoed long after Dionysus had moved on. He did not gloat. He did not linger to savor the destruction. Like a tide, he flowed onward, leaving Thebes to grapple with its grief. Like a truth, he could not be held or denied. Dionysus was the god of contradiction, of mask and unmasking, of laughter that turns to sobs, of tears that feel like worship. He lived in the moment when music becomes noise, when dance becomes surrender, when the soul breaks open and spills into the world. His temples were forests, his altars the open sky, his offerings the raw pulse of life itself. They built him shrines of ivy, but he preferred the wild. They offered him wine, but he offered transformation, a chance to shed the weight of the self and become something more. He was worshipped in twilight, in the space between control and collapse, where drums beat and voices rose, where the line between mask and face blurred. He was feared because he reminded mortals of what they hid, their grief, their longing, their untamed hearts. He was loved because he offered release, a moment to scream into the sky, to shatter and reform, to feel alive in a world that demanded stillness. In Athens, they honored him with plays, comedies, and tragedies born from his spirit. The masks worn by actors were his gift, a nod to the roles all mortals play, and the moment when those roles crack, revealing the truth beneath. Dionysus understood that life is a performance, but also a revelation, a dance between what we show and what we are. He asked his followers not to bow, but to question. What do you bury to survive? What do you unleash to feel alive? To follow Dionysus was not to abandon the world, but to uncover it, to cry in the open, to scream into the sky, to embrace the chaos that makes us whole. Some called him mad, but his madness was clarity turned inside out, a vision of the world. Not as it is, but as it aches to be. He saw the fractures in the soul, the places where pain and joy meet, and he invited his followers to dance in those spaces, to find freedom in the breaking. Even now, Dionysus lingers. He is in the street, festivals where strangers dance under colored lights, in the music that won't let you sit still, in the tear that falls unexpectedly during laughter. He is in the moment you say something you never dared to say, in the glass raised to a night that feels infinite, in the dream where you fly and fall and rise again. He is not a god you bow to, but one you become for a moment when the world drops away and you feel everything, grief, joy, madness, all at once. As you drift tonight, notice the rhythm of the world around you, the hum of a distant song, the flicker of a fire, the pulse of your own heart. Remember Dionysus, who was born twice, who carried vines instead of swords, who offered not judgment, but witness. Thank you for walking this myth with me. If it stirred your soul or set your spirit dancing, let it linger a little longer. Sleep well, and may your dreams be deep, your heart unbound, your life a celebration of the wild within.